companies are fighting back in big ways, but they are terrified of this.
All right, stick around. We're going to take phone calls in just a moment with David Blume, author of Alcohol Can Be a Gas. I've got to tell you, when I had David on about 2 years ago and we first talked about this, unbelievable response. So we'll take your phone calls. You can talk about the oil spill, ask David about Alcohol Can Be a Gas. That's all next on Coast to Coast AM. Well, next hour, Christian Von Leer joins us as we talk about the history of Atlantis and how it ties into 2012 prophecies. Get ready for that. But when we come back, we'll take your phone calls with David Blume right here on Coast to Coast AM. And David, what's the latest news with the oil leak? I mean, they've got the thing temporarily capped. They're working on their relief drills. They're going to try to pump a lot of mud down there. What do you think's going on?
Well, it's right now. It's everybody is holding their breath and playing brinksmanship, because if the administration says get that cap off of there and start collecting the oil like you were, then BP will be off the hook. But what's happening, of course, is at the time that they capped the well, there was a 2,000 pound per square inch discrepancy between the pressure in the reserve and the pressure they were measuring at the wellhead. Now, what that means is the oil is going somewhere from a split somewhere in the side of the well casing, the steel tube going down 4 miles into the earth. Now, at 2,000 psi, oil mixed with grit is practically like a plasma cutter. I mean, it cuts right through rock. So what's happening is, of course, they're hoping that nothing blows before they can get in there and hopefully punch into the well casing from the side with their new relief well and try to pump cement in there to seal the thing. But at 2,000 psi, in terms of a leak, the oil and the sand coming out from that leak is literally cutting the metal of the casing. So the leak is probably getting bigger and bigger, and that oil is somewhere collecting under the rock out there, and we don't know where it'll come up. We do know that it was coming up from the seafloor. The NOAA, the National Oceanic folks,
right,
were able to see the plumes, coming up from the ocean floor underwater and going to the west instead of to the east, which is where the rest of the oil was going, because it was in a different current. And the university, I guess it was of Virginia, also was able to use imaging techniques to see a 100-mile-long plume coming up from the ocean floor. So everyone knows now in the scientific community that there are other leaks. The question is, will keeping the cap on top of the well cause those leaks to get much bigger and cause, a runaway fissure before they can seal the well? And they're not even sure they can seal the well when they get those relief wells dug, because what they're trying to do from 5 miles up is hit a 21-inch wide, casing,
yeah, isn't that
dead
amazing?
center. And,
yeah.
Oh, man, the odds of that are pretty low.
All right, let's go to the phones. Orlando, Florida, east of the Rockies. We've got Gary there on Coast to Coast. Hey, Gary, welcome to the program.
Oh, welcome. Good morning, George, and good morning, Dave.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, got a question for you and kind of got some news for you. One, how far do you think that, I'll say, the big three or the big five are holding back where they could come up with a engine or something that would get, say, some really good gas mileage?
Well, I can tell you for a fact that when it comes to alcohol fuel, which is what I work in, we can get 22% better mileage than the current diesel technology using alcohol. That's a published paper. It was done for the DOE by an outfit down in the Southwest, and that was years ago that we were able to prove that. Now,
in layman's terms, about how many miles to the gallon would that be?
Well, it's up around 50, which is not bad.
Not bad.
Yeah, and there have been people further back in history who vaporized alcohol, and there's an outfit in Brazil working for a university that's doing it now, and they're getting practically no emissions measurable at all, which means all that fuel is turning into work. It's turning into miles per gallon instead of heat and exhaust going out the exhaust pipe. So they're getting, they're still working on it, but
they're still
vaporization.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, can I tell you some news?
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
All right, I don't know how many people, but this needs to be heard. There's a fellow out in Los Angeles named Chip Foose. He's at the LA Car Show, He's got a car out there. He's the one who did the design for the PT Cruiser and for the Prowler. And now he's got, I think it's called the Foos. And it's a four-banger, and it's got three wheels, and the front of it looks kind of like a Ferrari. And it gets 90 miles to the gallon. And it's also, you can turn your little switch, and you can run on three different kinds of fuel.
Well, that's great. You know, when you get the weight down in a vehicle, like you go to a three-wheel, maybe you're using carbon fiber or less steel, you can get some pretty respectable mileages up in the 90 or even 100 mile per gallon range. And if he's got a decent engine in it, then he's going to attain those by the light weight. I worry about those cars myself. I'm talking about me personally because, you know, the chances of your surviving an accident in something that tiny is,
that's
for me,
the problem.
nervous-making. So
that's the problem. There's some little cars out there now, David, and you picture them getting hit by a car or a semi. There's nothing left of them.
Yeah, and so, you know, although cutting weight is a really good idea where it's practical to do so, I think it should only be done, you know, valuing human life because, you know, it's great to get good mileage, but it's, you know, really more important for, you know, the literally 50,000 people a year who are, you know, killed in car accidents to, you know, have reasonable protection. So we got to run a balance there. And we don't have to sacrifice a safe car because we do have fuels like alcohol that are inexpensive to produce. You can do it on the small scale. You can do it as a small business. People can go into competition with the oil companies and win and keep the price of fuel below $3, you know, even below $2, or if you make it yourself, below $1. So I think we have multiple ways to solve the issue of vehicles and expense, but I think we should never give in on the issue of safety. And so I'd rather make the fuel cheaper and renewable and clean than give up the security of my pickup truck.
Let's go to San Francisco now. It's Bill's turn. Go ahead, Bill.
Hi, George. Hi, David.
Hey.
You know, San Francisco deals with its waste stream by having the company that takes the garbage and trash at a landfill take methane off that methane gas off the landfill and utilize that for its equipment in running the landfill. But it seems like they don't have any available to the public. So I'm curious as to whether that fuel source is viable for the general public to maybe use. And also, I saw you in a production with Daryl Hannah and a gentleman who altered a vehicle for alcohol. I was curious as to where that was produced.
That was Ed Begley, yeah. Ed Begley, the actor, he pretended to be a mechanic, and in 7 minutes he converted his Prius to alcohol. But as Ed says, he's not really an actor. He just plays one on television.
Exactly.
You know, in fact, we were down at Daryl Hannah's this last weekend talking to a group of people, and it appears that the biggest limousine company in Los Angeles is going to convert its vehicles to alcohol after talking with us and put in a tank. And they even want to put in one of our new distilleries and make their own from waste products that would otherwise go to the landfill. So, you know, this is making alcohol, not methane in this case. Methane is like propane. It's got the issue that you got to have an expensive tank and compress the gas into it so that you can get any mileage. It works, but methane from a landfill is actually environmentally pretty sound because you're actually converting plant matter, you know, that gets to the landfill into a fuel that you can use that's renewable. So, you know, from a landfill, natural gas makes sense, but from 5 miles below the ocean surface to get the methane is not renewable because that, you know, that gas, I should say it's not that it's not renewable because there's argument about that, but it's not safe ecologically because when you burn it, you're putting extra gases into the atmosphere that are not taken out. The plant matter in your landfill, when it was living, sucked carbon dioxide out of the air. So that makes a nice cycle. You know, it takes it out of the air, you burn it in the car, goes back. So you don't really add any extra, you know, gases to the atmosphere when you're using present-day plants, which are what's ending up in the landfill, like all your lawn clippings and stuff. But we can make alcohol from that stuff nowadays, too, which is very convenient. Liquid fuels, you know, have a huge amount of energy compared to gaseous fuels. So, you know, it's really, that's why liquid fuels are so popular for vehicles and have been for 100 years.